I want you to pay close attention to what I'm about to tell you. Because if you own any private property inside an HOA neighborhood, this story could genuinely save you from losing something you worked your entire life for. My neighbor didn't just try to use my lake without permission. She tried to legally steal it from me in front of 47 neighbors with a printed PowerPoint presentation, a blazer, and the kind of confidence that only comes from someone who has never once been told no in their entire life. Her name is Diane, and Diane had decided without asking me, without any legal authority, without a single document to support her, that my property deeded fishing lake was now community property. What happened at that HOA meeting is something this neighborhood will never forget, and neither will I. 6:15 in the morning. Fog sitting low and heavy over the water. The kind of quiet that only exists before the rest of the world wakes up. I had my coffee in one hand, my old tackle box in the other, and I was walking down the stone path that cuts through the back of my yard, toward the small fishing lake that has been legally deeded to my property since 1987. Three generations of my family had fished that water. My grandfather built the original dock with his own hands. Every plank, every post, every nail, his. I had just inherited this property 4 years ago, and I want you to understand something clearly before this story goes any further. That lake was not a neighborhood amenity. It was not an HOA feature. It was not a community pond. It was a privately owned body of water with my name on the deed, sitting on my land behind my fence line, accessed only through my backyard. I knew exactly what I owned, which is why, when I came around the corner of my back porch and saw four complete strangers sitting on my dock with folding chairs, a full-sized cooler, and one man already with a fishing line dropped in my water, my brain simply refused to process it for a full 5 seconds. I stood there, coffee going cold in my hand, staring. Then I walked forward. "Hey, folks," I called out, keeping my voice as calm as I possibly could because I genuinely believed this had to be a misunderstanding. "Can I help you with something?" The man holding the fishing rod turned around with the most relaxed, unbothered smile I have ever seen on a trespasser's face. He gave me a casual wave like we were old friends reuniting at a barbecue. "Oh, hey man, Diane told us the lake was open for guests this weekend. Beautiful spot you've got here. You're really lucky to live in this neighborhood." Three words hit me like ice water. Diane told us. I kept my expression neutral. I told them as politely as I could manage with my jaw clenched that there had been a serious misunderstanding, that the lake was private property, that Diane did not have the authority to grant access to my land, and that the HOA community pool was available 3 blocks over and they were more than welcome there. They were embarrassed, genuinely apologetic, good people who had simply trusted the wrong woman. I watched them pack up their chairs and their cooler and disappear back through the neighborhood. Then I stood on my dock alone, stared at the water, and felt something cold settle in my stomach, because I knew with absolute certainty that this was not a misunderstanding. This was a test, and Diane had just shown me exactly how far she was willing to go. If you are going to understand why this situation escalated the way it did, you need to understand who Diane Holloway actually was. Diane had moved into Maple Crest Ridge about 3 years before this story takes place, and within 6 months of arriving, she had quietly, methodically positioned herself as the unofficial authority of the entire neighborhood. HOA vice president, self-appointed social director, the woman who somehow ended up in charge of every committee, every event, every decision, not because anyone elected her to those roles, but because she simply never stopped volunteering until people gave up fighting her for the position. She was always in tennis whites, always carrying a clipboard or a phone or both, always smiling the specific smile of someone who is simultaneously being friendly and keeping score. And Diane had a gift, a very particular, very dangerous gift. for looking at things that belong to other people and mentally reclassifying them as shared community resources. The Hendersons' private gazebo. She started hosting her book club there on Sunday afternoons without asking. When Linda Henderson came home one day to find 8 women drinking wine in her backyard, Diane had explained very sweetly that the gazebo was visible from the street, and therefore part of the neighborhood's shared aesthetic experience. The Patels' extra driveway spaces during HOA events. Diane began directing neighborhood guests to park there, telling people the Patel had offered them, which the Patel had absolutely not done. Small violations, incremental invasions, always delivered with a smile, always wrapped in the language of community and togetherness. People let it go because Diane made your life considerably harder if you pushed back. She had a memory like a steel trap and a tongue like a scalpel, and she was not about bringing up your HOA violations, real or invented. At the next board meeting, if you embarrassed her, I had seen her coming for my leg for over a year. The lingering glances during neighborhood cookouts, the comments about what a shame it was that such a beautiful natural feature wasn't being shared with the whole community, the pointed questions about whether my deed had ever been formally reviewed by the HOA. That's why, 2 years earlier, I had spent $300 on a property attorney and had her draft a formal legal opinion letter confirming, in plain language, that my lake was entirely private, with zero HOA easements, zero public access rights, and zero community use agreements attached to the title. I had that letter sitting in a folder in my filing cabinet. I had been waiting. 40 minutes after I sent those strangers home, my phone rang. "I cannot believe you embarrassed my guests like that." Diane's voice came through the speaker like a pressure washer set to maximum. "Those are people visiting from out of town. They weren't hurting a single thing." "Diane," I said, sitting down at my kitchen table, voice completely level, "they were on my private property without my knowledge or my permission. That's trespassing." "The lake," she said, and I could hear her drawing herself up to full height through the phone, "is a community asset. It contributes to the desirability of this entire neighborhood. It affects every single person's property value. Resources like that belong to the whole community." "It's on my deed," I said. "My name, my property, my lake." She went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped to something quieter and significantly more dangerous. "We'll see about that." She hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone again and called my property attorney. 1 week later, I received an official written notice from the HOA board, not Diane personally, but the full board, which told me she had already gotten to them, informing me that the board was initiating a formal review of community access rights regarding the lake, and that a neighborhood meeting had been scheduled to discuss recreational equity for all residents. Recreational equity. She had actually used those words. I read the letter 3 times, called my attorney back, and she told me something that I held on to like a lifeline for the next 7 days. She has no legal standing, none whatsoever. But go to that meeting. Bring everything. Let her make her case in front of the whole neighborhood. Let them watch it collapse. The Tuesday evening meeting was held in the community clubhouse. I arrived to find it packed. Standing room only. Neighbors squeezed into folding chairs. A low buzz of conversation filling the room. Word had spread. People had come to watch. Someone had brought a charcuterie board. I am completely serious. Diane stood at the front of the room in a pressed blazer, a clicker in her hand, a projector screen behind her displaying her first slide in large bold letters. Maplecrest Ridge Community Lake, a shared vision for our neighborhood. She had made 12 slides. 12. I sat in the front row with my folder on my knee, my deed, my survey, and my attorney's legal opinion letter all printed, tabbed, and organized. I had also that morning quietly contacted the county records office and obtained a certified copy of the original plot map showing the lake's private designation dating back to 1987. I was ready. Diane presented for 11 minutes. Her argument, delivered with total confidence and zero legal basis, was essentially this: the lake was visible from multiple properties. It enhanced the neighborhood's collective aesthetic. It had been informally accessed by community members in the past. She said this without looking at me, and it was time for the HOA to formally recognize it as a managed community amenity. She then displayed on the projector a photograph of my dog, a photograph she had taken standing at my property line. She smiled at the room. "I think we can all agree," she said warmly, "that natural spaces like this belong to the whole community. This isn't about one person. This is about all of us." She looked at me. The smile didn't waver. I stood up. I walked to the front of the room, set my folder on the document camera, and put my deed on the screen. The room went completely quiet. "This is the original deed to my property," I said, keeping my voice calm and clear. "Recorded in 1987. My name, my address, includes the lake and the surrounding acreage, privately held, with no community easements of any kind." I swapped to the survey. "This is a professional land survey completed 18 months ago confirming the exact boundaries." I swapped to the attorney's letter. "And this is a written legal opinion from a licensed property attorney confirming that no HOA easement, public access right, or community use agreement exists for this parcel, and that none can be created without my written consent, and a formal legal process that the HOA has neither initiated nor has grounds to initiate." I looked up at the room. Then I looked directly at Diane. "The lake is not community property. It has never been community property, and it will not become community property." The room was absolutely silent. And then Diane Holloway, HOA vice president, self-appointed neighborhood authority, woman who had never once in 3 years been publicly outmaneuvered, completely lost it. She slapped both palms flat on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "This is exactly the problem with people like you." Her voice had abandoned all pretense of warmth, raw, furious, shaking. "You sit on that lake like it's your personal kingdom, and the rest of us just have to look at it from our windows. That water belongs to this community, and I will take this to the county commissioner if I have to. I will take this to a judge." "Diane." "Gerald," the HOA president started. "No, Gerald. He has been hoarding a natural resource, while families in this neighborhood have children who deserve access to—" "Diane." Gerald's voice cut through the room, firm and final. "The documents are clear. The HOA has no legal authority over private property within neighborhood boundaries. This review is closed." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Diane stood there for a long moment, her printed presentation still glowing on the screen behind her. Slide 7. Community access benefits for all residents. Her face cycling through red, white, and something that looked almost a genuine shock, as though she truly could not believe this was happening. She gathered her blazer. She picked up her presentation. She walked to the door. It was one of those slow-close pneumatic doors. It couldn't slam no matter how hard she pushed. She disappeared in the parking lot. 4 seconds of silence. Then from somewhere in the middle of the room, someone started clapping. 3 days later, I received a certified letter from Diane's personal attorney claiming I had defamed her character by presenting legally recorded public document at a community meeting. My attorney responded in 4 sentences. I never heard from Diane's attorney again. 6 weeks later, Diane resigned from the HOA board. Personal reasons. The house went on the market in October. She reportedly told people she was leaving because the neighborhood lacked vision. On the first Saturday morning after her moving truck pulled away, I woke up at 6:15, poured my coffee, walked down the stone path through my backyard. The fog was low on the water. The dock was empty and quiet. The lake was completely still. Not a stranger in sight, not a folding chair, not a cooler, not a fishing line that didn't belong to me. I sat down, cast my line, and stayed there for 4 hours without a single interruption. My grandfather built that dock. My name is on that deed. And some things, no matter how loud someone screams, simply belong to the people, to the person they belong to. If an HOA Karen ever tried to claim your private property as community space, drop your story in the comments below. And if you're new here, subscribe, because in this neighborhood, the drama is just getting started.